seaplane off of the coast of Bermuda and they saved his life, his answer was, life is full of risk. You either get out there and take some, or you sit at home and watch other people do it on TV. Good morning. Stevie the Guide here in Kerrville, Texas. Back in Kerrville from Houston. Thank God I'm back in Kerrville. Houston is a big, amazing place, but I'm glad I don't live there. I was down there helping my mother for a couple of days, and I'm back here on the banks of the Guadalupe River. And I hope you'll come and visit me sometime. We're building a really cool big old building right here on the river, and we're going to move into it probably in 2 or 3 months. And we're real excited. I'm going to start doing this live stream from my telephone on a little stick, and so I'm going to move around. I'm going to show you the environment around here that we live in, and that'll have to be at sometime a little bit later than 5 a.m. in the morning. But I'm moving through what I call Psychedelic Week. I am sharing, if you haven't been here the last few days, I've been sharing all my experiences with psychedelic substances. And back in the 80s, the handful of times that I tried it was just recreational. I did get some therapeutic value out of it by osmosis, especially that night in Bali, Indonesia, when we went to the Lazy Swan restaurant and drank the special orange juice. That was with my friends Ronald and Cornelia Colleen, who afterwards became my lifelong friends. And Ronald was one of the groomsmen in my wedding here in Kerrville. But those early experiences, flash forward from 1985 to 2017, those initial experiences and my 8 years in Latin America living down there gave me the courage to go down to a place called Finca Ambiwasi outside of Bogota, Colombia, and try a plant medicine called ayahuasca when I was suffering from real depression in Houston, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I knew enough that I didn't want to take pharmaceutical drugs. And the primary reason I would never do that myself, and I'm not advising you, but I wouldn't do it because I tried it once for about 2 weeks, and the first thing that happened almost instantly when I took this anti-depression, anti-anxiety medication was my weenie didn't work. I mean, I couldn't have an orgasm to save my life when I took that stuff. And I just don't roll that way, okay? It cut off a part of my humanity, and I couldn't deal with it. And so I quit. I was willing to face whatever else came, but I wasn't willing to cut off my sex life for a pharmaceutical. And so I knew enough about it. And in the past, I used exercise and motivation and do whatever I could naturally, but I just wouldn't take those chemical management drugs. They're not for me. And I'm not advising you what's good for you. I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical or mental health advice, all right? Not licensed to do that. But I can tell you about what my experience has been. And I was suffering from depression in Houston, and I was invited by a nice young guy to come to Colombia to his place. It turned out to be Finca Ambiwasi, and he turned out to be tied to Juanito Chindoy, the head shaman of this beautiful place that gives what I believe is a tremendous gift to mankind. And in our country and in the West, the use of psychoactive plants like ayahuasca, like peyote, like psilocybin mushrooms, and other things like marijuana, these have all been demonized in our culture. And there's been a huge propaganda campaign against all that, even of the research of that, when they were doing tremendously promising research back in the 50s at Johns Hopkins and other places. And so anyway, I've tried to review that. I'm I'm going to try to wrap that up because we'll be moving on next week. It's the end of the week. It's the end of this psychedelic week. And I have poured out my soul. And why do I do that, ladies and gentlemen? Because I love you. I truly do. And I'm going to honestly and authentically and genuinely pour myself out into this camera for whoever might want to listen. And I thank you to the handful of folks that have been encouraging me and telling me you got a little something out of it. I'm grateful to you. And it encourages me to press on. And in this exercise of being honest and authentic, it helps me to overcome my fear of what people think so that I can pour myself out honestly. And I also do that in the Forbidden Discussions, which I've been doing for the last 15, 16 weeks over at the Unity Church here in Kerrville, and for over a year before that in Austin. And what I found is when I pour myself out honestly, and I tell you all these secrets, supernatural, taboo kind of things, what happens is people start to tell me things. They say, you know what? Something happened to me one time. I can identify that. I've been hiding in this, this fearful cloak I call normal, trying to be normal, trying to fit in, trying not to lose that contact, that need to belong to the tribe, and that's what keeps us often from being our authentic selves. And people, they begin to die inside. They live lives of quiet desperation, and I'm just not willing to do that. And so I'll start with a quote from a guy named Alexander Shulgin. He wrote, he was author of a book called Tryptamines I Have Known and Loved. And tryptamines, like dimethyltryptamine or DMT, are the active ingredients in ayahuasca and also in psilocybin. It's a slight molecular difference, apparently, between mushrooms and ayahuasca. And anyway, this affects the center of your brain, which already has dimethyltryptamine in it. Your brain, one of the natural ingredients of your brain is DMT, and that's associated with imagination and dreams and visions and so forth. And when you take this plant medicine, it just gives you a higher dose of it. And allows you to communicate with yourself. Your conscious and subconscious can talk a little bit. But here's what Alexander Shulgin says. He says, there is a wealth of information built into us, tucked away in the genetic material in every one of our cells. Without some means to access, there is no way to even begin to guess at the extent and quality of what is there. The psychedelic drugs allow exploration of this interior world and insights into its nature. There's a wealth of information built into us, tucked away in the genetic material of every one of our cells. And without a means to access it, we don't know what's there. And sometimes we come upon it accidentally, and sometimes we have these insights, but we're so conditioned to stay in that left brain logical and ignore the right brain intuitive. And it's a strip mining of the commodities of that left brain, the things that society wants out of us. And we're taught from the time we're very young that there's nothing in that sort of imaginary realm, that supernatural realm. But I'm here to tell you, it's been my experience over the last couple of years in my field research that there is something there, and there's something vitally important there. And the tryptamines, or the plant medicines, the psychedelics, help you access that, help you look at that. Alan Watts says it's like looking under a microscope or in a telescope, examining things very closely, and then stepping back when you're sober and evaluating all that and spending a lot of time doing that. And And that leads me into another quote by Alan Watts. Alan Watts is, of course, the famous American who went over to Asia and studied Buddhism and brought it back to this country. A very thoughtful guy. If you've never listened to Alan Watts on YouTube, he's a fascinating man. I really like him. Alan Watts says there are two specific objections to the use of psychedelic drugs. First, use of these drugs may be dangerous. However, every worthwhile exploration is dangerous. Climbing mountains, testing aircraft, rocketing into our outer space, or collecting botanical specimens in jungles, everything's dangerous. But if you value knowledge and the actual delight of exploration more than mere duration of uneventful life, you're willing to take those risks. And like I said in the beginning, Jimmy Buffett says, life is full of risk. You either get out there and take some, or you sit around at home watching other people do it on TV. And I was never that kind of guy. I was always a get out there and have a look around the planet kind of guy. And that's the way instinctively I roll since I was very young. By the time I was 6 or 8 years old, I was going off on expeditions in the woods behind our home. And by the time I was 18, I started running around the planet with oil exploration companies for a good 10 years. And it got me to see a lot of things. I've been very blessed that way. I've been scuba diving and wildlife guide in the Galapagos Islands. I was a volunteer research diver for the Australian Institute of Marine Science. I've been hunting in Africa, and I've done as much exploration of this planet as I can. That's been my deal, and so the exploration of my own inner landscape is of great interest to me. And one of the things that the amazing Terence McKenna says is, if the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness don't include the right to experiment with your own consciousness, then the Declaration of Independence is not worth the hemp it's written on. If as a consenting adult who is in charge of their own life, if you're not allowed to use the natural plants of the land to explore your consciousness or to heal yourself, because some authorities, say, no, you have to buy your drugs in a pharmacy. You cannot go and pick the natural plants of the land like your great-grandparents did. Well, then life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness do not really apply. And the Declaration of Independence is not worth the hemp it's written on. And I agree with that. The only reason that we're not allowed to even research these things is because government officials come and point guns at us and send us off to prison if we do that. And this, to me, folks, seems wrong. But that's why I would go all the way to South America when I want therapy with natural plants. I don't do it in this country because I don't want government officials pointing guns at me and taking me off to jail and wrecking my life because I use natural plants. All right, and so anyway, don't get me started on that. Vote your conscience. So I'm continuing, and I'm going to try to conclude with this 12-day ayahuasca retreat I went on. Many of the people back home associate this with going to South America to visit a witch doctor and drink poison, and that's because they don't know anything about it, and they've been taught since they were born that this kind of stuff is demonic. They take these wise people down in other countries that do all manner of different healing and spiritual practice, and they label them demonic or somehow evil. And I think the veil's being lifted on a lot of that. So anyway, I went down to Finca Ambiwasi in 2017. I went to a 12-day healing retreat. and we had 4 nights of ayahuasca ceremony. And I've been through that. I had some cosmic brain surgery, and I've been through that. I resolved major issues with my deceased father, with my mother, with my brother, and other family members. I felt embraced by my whole family since, time immemorial, and all the way back to Egypt and Samaria. All right, and then I was lifted up into this great hall, and I was honored. It was the greatest honor of my life. These twinkling light beings, who are the most beautiful, sensitive, humorous, and complimentary beings that I've ever encountered, and it was just a stunning experience that's beyond description. And they encouraged me, and they raised my self-esteem, and I'm forever grateful that I got to meet them. And they're as real that these little twinkling light beings, like fairies, in if you've ever read a book called The Mists of Avalon, or any of these fairy stories, this is from where fairies come from, folks. This is where the legend of the fairy comes from. They're real, all right? And when you can see a little broader perspective and see past this veil, they're very real. They all have individual personalities. They're colorful and beautiful and friendly. And I got to meet them, and they honored me in a tremendous way. And I look back at some of my history, and so moving on, I was I had problems in my marriage, and when I was doing about the 3rd night, I had a very detailed look at my wife in the last 20 years that I'd been married to her. Wonderful lady. And I thought of all the finest qualities she had, and how beautiful she was, and how well she did Christmas, and what a dedicated Christian she was, and how she did birthdays and parties and holidays to make everybody feel good, and how she cared about making people feel special, and so many things, and how the thought of losing her just broke my heart, but I saw her in this, I got a vision of her when she was young and beautiful, and she was sleeping like Sleeping Beauty in a glass box, and I was trying to talk to her, and I couldn't penetrate that barrier between us. And that's how it had been, even though we had worked together to raise these wonderful girls who we love and I'm so proud of. And we had, there was a tremendous amount of love and fun in our marriage, but there had been this barrier between us that I could not get through, and it caused us to be polarized. It was our worldview was different, and mine was certainly changing. I'm a curious, questioning explorer. And she's very left-brain, logical, highly intelligent attorney, CPA, and follow the rules. These are the rules. Stay within the boundaries. She's a color within the lines person, and I'm a color outside the lines person. And anyway, I saw basically that I was going to get a divorce, and that she wanted to be set free, and so did I. And I mourned. I cried so deeply over her, and I saw all my flaws and how difficult it had been for her to be married to me for 20 years and to take care of our kids and be a homeschool mom and be missionaries down in Peru, and how hard she worked and all these things. And I just cried and cried, and I'm reminded of this quote from Cary Grant, the actor, and I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. And he says here, Cary Grant, the actor, had a psychedelic therapy experience back in the, I want to say, the 50s or 60s, when they were doing the psychedelic research, I think at Johns Hopkins, but I don't know what circumstances. But Cary Grant, the actor, took psychedelics, and this is what he had to say about it. He said, "I have been born again," he told the astonished reporters. "I have been through a psychiatric experience which has completely changed me. I was horrendous. I had to face things about myself which I never admitted, which I didn't know were there. Now I know that I hurt every woman I ever loved. I was an utter fake, a self-opinionated bore. I know it all who knew very little. I found I was hiding behind all kinds of defenses, hypocrisies, and vanities. I had to get rid of them layer by layer. The moment when your conscious meets your subconscious is a hell of a wrench. With me, there came a day when I saw the light." That's Cary Grant, the Hollywood actor. And I would say there was a lot of that in this experience. I saw my shortcomings, my mistakes, and how I'd been selfish and defensive, and I was hiding behind these vanities and this ego. And I saw that I was going to get a divorce, and before it ever happened. The reason there weren't a lot of tears when it happened was because I'd cried them all down there in Colombia, because I knew it was going to, and I knew it would be hard on me, on my wife, my kids, my family, but I knew that it needed to happen, and Mother Ayahuasca showed me that, and that neither of us could really truly evolve into who we were supposed to be if we stayed in that sort of polarized, non-communicating state that we were in. And so I went home and had a very peaceful, friendly discussion with my wife, one of the best discussions I believe I've ever had, or series of discussions, and we agreed to get a very friendly, peaceful divorce, and we're still friends today, and I'm grateful for that, and I love her. But that is a lot of what I saw on that third night, and then there was a whole. I drank a second cup of it on that third night of ceremony down in Colombia, and there was a very high dimensional thing that happened where I can't even really describe it for you. This portion of the journey was a lot of very fast moving pictures, and I associate it with like being in the back of a car and looking out the window as the images go by. And just about the time you think you focus on one, it's gone. But I got the impression that it was like in a computer, a defragging process. It was purging unnecessary things out of me, and trying to encourage the better things. And that's about the best I can tell you about that. I was looking when I sort of opened my eyes after that. I was looking at my friend who was laying there next to me. His name is Alok, A-L-O-K, which is a very unusual name. Wonderful guy who's a mountain climbing guide. And when I woke up, I was looking at his feet, and I started examining every detail of his feet. You know, this ayahuasca gives you this extrasensory perception. And his feet started telling me the whole history of him hiking all 7 of the largest peaks all around the world, and hiking the Hillary Step up to the top of Mount Everest, and I was just having a whole communication with this guy's feet, and that was a really interesting thing. And I noticed that he had an injury. Even though I couldn't see that, I perceived that those feet had an injury of some kind. I asked him about it later, and sure enough, they had. And anyway, that was amazing. And so I perhaps it's because I was having all those feelings about my wife and my coming divorce and so forth that I started singing to myself a passage in the Bible that's also a song. Make in me a clean heart, O Lord, and renew a right spirit within me. And this was passing through my mind, and when all of a sudden I'm taken into cosmic surgery again, the cosmic surgeons start examining my heart, and they open my chest, as I am in this cosmic surgery. And they examined my heart, and I thought they were just going to do some repairs on them. They took it right out, and I was like, "Hey, wait a minute, I need that." And they just giggled and tossed it somewhere, and they came back with this much larger white heart. It was pure white, and I was like, "Well, that's not going to fit in there." And with that, they just kind of shoved it in my chest, and they explained to me that it would pump love-flavored blood, that this new heart that they were putting into me, it was going to pump love-flavored blood. And they said, love-flavored blood, much better than the old one. Love content is higher now, they said, and that my love content in my heart was higher. I believe that to be so. I tend to express my love towards people much more easily now since that happened. Do with that what you will, folks. All right, that is my reality, and I'm very grateful to those cosmic surgeons. They did a procedure on my ear, which was a high frequency surgery, and it caused a tweak. I had to ask them to lower the frequency. It was the strangest feeling. And but they explained to me, this is going to help you listen to people better. I don't think it made me hear exactly better. This ear is damaged from firing a shotgun several thousand times when I was bird hunting when I was young. I went to the doctor one time, and he did a whole examination on me. When I came back for the results, he said, "You're a bird hunter and you shoot right-handed. Is that correct?" And I was like, "Yeah, how do you know that?" He said, "Because the left ear's damaged. When you hold a shotgun like this ear is exposed to the report, the muzzle, and this one's pointed back that way, so it gets a little bit of a break. But I'm pretty hard of hearing. If anybody knows about a good hearing aid, sooner or later it's going to be time for me to get one. But this surgery they did on me, it does make me listen more intently to people, and go figure. And so let's see. Okay, so here's an interesting component of this whole ayahuasca ceremony. You go up into this Maloka building with 50 other people, and you arrive there, and there's about 10 or 12 of these shamans and caregivers, and they care for you. Musicians are up there who play this gentle ceremonial music in the night that's so lovely. And you drink this ayahuasca medicine, and you go through these experiences. And the caregivers are there caring for you. But at some point during the night, you're called up to the shamans up in the front, and you have this healing ceremony that they do, and it's quite interesting. They ask you to take off your shirt. Sometimes the girls wear their bra, and sometimes they don't. And they'll come along. They may call you up about 10 or 12 at a time, and you kind of sit up there or kneel there, and they'll start. They take these palm leaves and they're rustling them, and they're going whoosh toe, whoosh toe, whoosh toe, and it's a blessing, and then they'll come along, and they might spread some this cool flower water on you, and then they have these little stinging nettles, and it's not like bull nettle or something that hurts real bad, but it just causes a tingling in the skin. It's a natural plant that they grow that is specifically for this ceremony, and what they'll tell you is that it causes the pores to open up and become very active, which it does, and it'll sting a little bit. But it's causing a opening that allows for cosmic intelligence to come in, let's say, and so you're going through this sensory experience. You'll feel the stinging of the nettles, and they're doing their little thing, and they're hearing a little music, and there's a lot of going on, and they'll blow this flower water on you, and they'll put this salve on you, and it's it's a marvelous experience. But when you're struggling under the, being what they call drunk on the medicine, and you're in this state, sometimes it's a struggle just to sit upright. And the most amazing thing happened to me when I got up there, and I'd been going through the work for most of the night when I finally got called up there, and I'm sitting trying to sit up straight on this pillow, and I was sort of staggering, drooping, and they were doing all this to me, and I really didn't know if I could stay sitting up. And all of a sudden, this bright light was right above my head, and this bright, pure light. And I had my eyes closed, and I was looking up, and this bright light just came shining down on me, and it shined right through my whole body and through my spine, and like went down into the earth, and it caused this tremendous amount of energy to fill my body, and it was as if the earth and the universe were connected through me. I was the conduit. And it gave me this tremendous strength and this feeling of well-being. It's hard to describe. And this is my attempt at describing it. It says, a hole or a window opened up in the sky above my head, producing a brilliant beam of super white light. It coursed down, striking me on the top of my head, filling my brain and traveling down through my neck, my spine, tingling every vertebrae in my back, and shooting out my tailbone and penetrating the ground. In this way, I became a type of conduit for this tremendous divine energy. I instantly became clear-headed. The pain and fatigue left me. I straightened my back and squared my shoulders to receive the healing with joy and thankfulness. And when I did, the power got brighter and stronger, racing through me to the earth and drenching every cell in my body with warmth, relief, and fuel. It was miraculous. As the ceremony concluded, the message was clear. It is from your connection to God and source energy from which you derive your power. What you generate on your own is weak and frail by comparison. Develop your connection with Source, and you can do more than you ever dreamed possible. And your connection with Source, that raising of the vibration, balancing of the left and right brain. It's not like you're going to be drinking ayahuasca every day, folks. This is not something you'd want to do every Saturday night for fun, believe me. But what it was telling me was that the development of my own connection with Source, my own divine energy, my sliver of the whole, and to develop that in any way I can figure out how, that is what will give me strength and power and the ability to carry out my mission. That is what the plant medicine told me that night, and so this is why a part of the reason why I feel so strongly to broadcast this message any way I can. Whether it's through a meditation practice or yoga or breathing exercises or any number of things, going down to Colombia and trying plant medicine. Don't do it here unless you want to run the risk of getting thrown in jail. But there are ways, and and to develop that connection, to release that strong left brain egoic mind a little bit, and allow that right brain intuitive to come up, creating a balance, and allowing that source energy to flow through you. The underlying theme through all of these ayahuasca experiences was surrender. My ability to surrender to this plant medicine, which is a plant intelligence of the highest order, and to surrender to it and let go of the steering wheel of my mind and be a passenger and let it take me wherever it wants to go, and to actively give it permission to take me where it will. In that way, you step aside and do not block that source energy, that Christ consciousness within you. That is what I believe Christ was trying to teach all of us. And you can look at Bible passages that point to that. But the raising of the Christ consciousness, and I believe when enough of us are able to do that, it will create what they refer to as the second coming of Christ. It will cause a collective harmony, and everything is vibration and frequency. And when we can raise our own consciousness to a certain level and radiate that around us, at some point, just like the bringing down the walls of Jericho, when they're going around with this trumpet and getting it to a certain vibrational frequency, that it was the vibration that brought those walls down. And this is how it comes to me, folks. That's all I can tell you. And so after all that, I rested for a while, and it was quite an exercise. Believe me, it was quite an exercise, and I rested for quite a while after that, and I had cup number 2, and I had some very heavy emotional thoughts about my life, myself, my behavior, and friends and family to whom I needed to apologize and make amends. And the thing about Mother Ayahuasca, man, there is no getting away from making. They call her Mother. This plant medicine, this plant energy is a feminine, intuitive energy. They call it Mother Ayahuasca. And I think part of the reason, and I felt it, it's like a big, strong country woman with an apron on, who's sweet and loving, but will grab you and beat the crap out of you if you turn, the wrong way. And then she'll love you and care for you and ask you, what do you want for dinner? And this is how it comes to me. And I was beginning to have a lot of emotional work to do, and crying and blubbering. And this is a good description here. And I'll tell you, I'm very glad I wrote these field notes. Every morning after these experiences, I would go down and just write in my notebook till I had nothing more to say. And when I start guiding these experiences and taking people down there, one of the things we will do together while we're at the farm is sit and have note-taking time and debriefing after every event. And I'm getting some help from a good friend, Anna Wang. Anna Wang is in Houston, and she's encouraging me to start offering these tours. And she's going to help me with some of the logistics, and so I'm grateful for that. And so it'd be a comprehensive type trip where we have some meetings before we go to Colombia. We spend the whole 12 days in Colombia together, and then we'll have meetings afterwards to debrief on it. And I think there's a lot of people out there who's not just going to jump on a plane and fly to South America to drink ayahuasca, even though they might be intrigued. They need more of a handheld experience. And I'm getting to where I'd be willing to do that because I know a lot of people do need it. But here's my description of what happened. I was having all these very emotional thoughts there on that third night, and it was really working me over. And the supersonic file box in my mind was really rolling, and I became worked into a crying, blubbering, slobbering frenzy. At one point, I completely broke down and wailed so loudly that my neighbors and the whole world could hear it. The people in the room. I was just wailing, from all the mistakes I had made in my life. And they don't call it the work for nothing. I mean, and the crying, I cried more in Colombia than I've cried, maybe in my whole life, and certainly since my childhood. And there's a tremendous outpouring of emotion that's so healthy and cathartic, especially for guys, and if you're afraid of that, then this is not for you, all right? But if you're willing to look at your stuff and mourn over it, there's something so healthy in the ability to cry. Anyway, so there I am slobbering in a blubbering, slobbering frenzy. And at one point I completely broke down and wailed loudly. And when I finally washed up, dazed and egotistically naked on the emotional beach of my shipwrecked psyche, mentally spent and physically in pain from head to my little toes, nauseated and unhappy, I thought it was all over. And I thought of Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn in The African Queen when their little ship is hopelessly stuck on the mud, and leeches and mosquitoes and heat and humidity torturing their flesh, and there's no options but just to lay down and suffer and die. You remember The African Queen, and he's saying, we're finished, old girl. We'll never get off of this mud. And that's the way I felt in the depths of my despair with ayahuasca. I had just worked myself into this whole, I just mourned over every little mistake I'd ever made in my whole life. I was like, I was ready to die, man. I was washed up. I was done. Take my miserable soul, Lord. I thought, I can't go any further. Please forgive me. I'm yours. Just take me home. And folks, I had hit rock bottom. All right, rock bottom with this stuff, and I was at the end, and it was a death of sorts. It really was. And then in my pain and delicious sorrow, I lay down on my side to rest and quietly suffer. And it was then, way down there at the bottom, that they came for me. All right? And I gradually began to notice from the left side of my vision field the occasional bright twinkle of a star. Now, you appreciate this is with my eyes closed. I'm laying in the dark Maloka building, just the light of the fires, and I'm huddling there on my little bed with my blanket, and I'm just, at life's lowest point, right? And I gradually began to notice from the left side of my vision field the occasional bright twinkle of a star. And I thought at first it was only wishful thinking, but by and by, more stars began to filter in and collect and dance for me, and touching me, giving me small tastes of energy. If you find a man dehydrated out on the desert, dying of thirst, the last thing you do is to tell him to drink a glass of water. It would kill him. First, he gets only small drops and trickles on his lips and patted on his face and body. It is the gradual incremental hydration that gives him strength to drink a bit more and then a bit more. This is what they were doing to me. They were giving me, I was in this fragile, emotionally destroyed state. And bit by bit, they were giving me these little bitty tastes of energy and little color and little twinkle. And bit by bit, they touched me and sprinkled me and twinkled me and tickled my mind and body, kissed me in their own special way, and shined nutritional colored lights through my optic nerves. And I remember, this feeling of, just slowly gathering a little strength and a little relief. So they tickled my optic nerves, and they wiggled my toes and brought me a partial revival from the pain. And then they said, I could hear them talk to me telepathically. They said, roll over and lay on your back and relax. And so I did. And I was just exhausted. I remember I just laid there, just destroyed. And they said, breathe. And I'll always remember to breathe. They said, always remember to breathe. They said, breathe. And I did, which brought relief and more sparkles and feelings of joy and care. And they said, breathe deeper. And I took a long, deep breath, and at once all the pain, physical, mental, emotional, in me was gone. All right. I took that deep breath, and it was gone. And my mind cleared, and I recovered completely all of a sudden. And it was a miracle. And they said, can we go now? And I said, yes. And I gave them permission to do whatever they wanted. And there was a laughing and cheering and chattering as they raised me up slowly to a colorful and increasingly noisy place somewhere above the ceiling of the Maloka. Up into the heavens is where they lifted me, into this beautiful, beautiful environment. At this point, an enormous heavenly host of celebrants and well-wishers poured in to greet me as we arrived in the most vibrant, color-filled place that I've ever seen. Neon color patterns danced around and marveled in awe. The beautiful music of our musicians there in the Maloka, the real people, you could hear their music in the background, and there was just up in the heavens, folks, there was a ballet of divine origin. It was the most beautiful experience of my life. After I'd been in the depths of despair, they raised me up in this gorgeous place, and neon color patterns danced around, and I marveled in awe the beautiful music of our musicians guiding them in a ballet of divine origin. And they explained to me that when we are at our lowest, when we're completely broken down, that is when they can do their best work on us. And when we're completely shattered, just when I thought it was all over, finished on the mud of life, that's when they lifted me up into a place of joy and swirling brilliant color and health and joy and safety. And they told me to remember mercy and joy and to share it. Do not forget who you are, they said over and over and over. Friends, these light beings, these fairies, these what Terence McKenna calls elves. These friends came in from all over the galaxy to greet me and touch me with electronic bolts of color in my mind and body. Indescribably and overwhelmingly beautiful, folks. Unbelievable. And after a long, long, happy time in this cosmic circus where I was celebrated and comforted and healed, it began to lift, and I was gradually lowered back into my body. And when I got in there, I was not nearly as much pain, and I kept saying thank you over and over, and it was the most beautiful experience of my life, really. That was right up there with being honored in that great hall by all these same light beings. And as they waved and went, I thanked them profusely from my heart, promising never to forget that I'm a warrior king and a healer, and I will spend every moment of my life trying to responsibly and compassionately carry out the duties of my royal position and care for the people of this planet. And I promise to rejoin my brother who I love, and help him heal, and to help heal our family tribe. And I've done that since I came home. And you can ask my brother about that. And he thought it was amazing, the transformation when I came back from this place. But from there, all energy, they were telling me, from the healing of our family tribe, all energy and prosperity flow out of that. And when my head began to clear, I noticed I was waving up at the ceiling and gently verbalizing the words goodbye and thank you over and over and over again. And it was absolutely beautiful. And it makes me cry just thinking about it. I was like broken down. It was almost like, you know, in basic training in the military, they break you all the way down and then they build you up into something greater than you were before. And I believe that's what happened. And I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if they had not encouraged me in this way and lifted my self-esteem. And those little light beings, those elves, they're as real to me as anything else in the world. And they're here around me now. I don't see them visually because I don't have the benefit of the medicine, although every once in a while I see their twinkles. And they're sometimes different colors. I love to see the ones that are the color blue. But sometimes they're a white color, and they remind me that they're there. And I believe this is what we turn into when we check our body back in. We turn into one of these colorful light beings, and they have a language. People say, "Well, gosh, you know, what's it going to be like?" What I believe it's going to be like is a tremendous amount of fun, and you'll have a little light body that you fly around in. You can communicate, you can travel, you can do all sorts of things that we can't do because we are in this university called Earth, and we've chosen to be in these bodies, and we've been loaned these bodies, and it's so valuable to us to learn things and have experiences. So anyway, I've only got about 8 or 10 minutes left, and just to wrap it up, you could go to a therapy for years and spend thousands of dollars and never get to these places where I got to in 4 nights of ceremony. And Mother Ayahuasca plays a completely different game altogether. My perception is that Mother is really my higher self, my Holy Spirit, my Christ consciousness, and giving myself or my conscious mind an examination and advice. I'm giving myself advice. This is why it is so quick to expose and identify problem areas within me, because it already knows me. All right? In my memory bank, even though they're repressed, I have all the memories of my whole life and the past lives before that. It's all in there. It's just that in our left brain logical mind, we can't perceive it. And this ayahuasca gives you help to do that. The medicine begins to work, and the file box of my mind begins to roll and then stops and looks at trouble spots. I'm not consciously in control of that investigation. I don't direct it. It just happens. I've already given the plant medicine ayahuasca permission to do whatever it wants, and so it does indeed. It travels wherever it wants to go. It makes me look at whatever it wants me to look at. And then I have to deal with that. It's not like a therapist where I can hide from the guy, and pretend like, I'm okay. It will, ayahuasca will put its finger right on the problem areas and have you examine that and deal with that and help it come to the surface and heal. And that's been my experience. And it will, like a systematic computer, it will be looking around. You remember that movie 48 Hours where Eddie Murphy, he's in this bar. He's already smashed the window. He smashed the big mirror. He's got a cowboy hat on. Him and Nick Nolte are in this bar, and Eddie Murphy's like caused this great commotion. He starts breaking the glasses on the bar, and he says, "Let's see what we can fuck with next." And that is what ayahuasca it's like. It's like, it starts to mess with your whole file box and get into the secrets that you're keeping from everybody. It knows, all right? And it will go in there and examine and mess with and say, here, let's look at this. You will look at that. And by God, you will look at it, all right? And after you have actively surrendered to it, there's no hiding from this cosmic therapist. No matter how clever you may think you are, she'll strip down the pants of your defensive ego quicker than my grandmother could give me a spanking. And she will ferret out any dirty emotional laundry that as she sees fit. And then she'll confront you with it on the spot, and baby, you will listen to her, and you will look at it, I promise you. And as you cry and blubber because your own embedded flaws and secrets and mistakes have now been exposed to you, she will then hug you and remind you of your amazing worth and value and her love for you. And she will then show you what needs to be done to make it all better, and you will likely walk away very grateful for the experience. At least I did. And I'm very grateful for all that. And beyond Mother Ayahuasca and the plant medicine, let me give a word of thanks to the others, all right? The little light beings. Beyond Mother Ayahuasca, the central figure of these far-reaching mental journeys, there are others I encountered and for whom I am at a loss to explain quite as easily. It brings me great joy to think of them, and now I giggle when I write about them because they were so much fun and so comforting and so encouraging and showed me so many inconceivable things. I am, of course, talking about Terence McKenna's elves, or the multitude of light beings who came to me at some of my lowest points and took my pain away and swept me off into the most beautiful realms. And I could never have imagined, and showered me with multi-sensory gifts that you cannot possibly imagine. They are also the cosmic doctors who were foretold about during our preparation, who performed multiple surgeries on me. It is as real to me now as when it happened in Colombia, and I believe they helped my mind and body. The outsider who has never had this experience will likely write this off as figments of a distorted, hallucinogenic imagination, and he's free to do that. But at the time, to this day, and forevermore, these unexplainable beings have my respect, my friendship, and my deepest gratitude. We now have a relationship I will always remember and cherish. I have been a member of a Baptist church for 20 plus years, and I was a missionary in Peru for 4 of those years. And I prayed with fellow church members, had counselors, and none of that has exposed and resolved so many issues so quickly. And I'm grateful to that experience that helped me root out. I wouldn't say my life just instantly got 100% better, but it got a lot better. And it helped me get an overview of things that are going on. It helped me dump off baggage. It helped me realize my personal value and the value of my body. I mean, so many things you can't even describe. To me, it's a crime against humanity that this natural substance is illegal for the general public to possess or even to study and research. And that's apparently changing now. Johns Hopkins and other places, they're doing research on psychedelics and mental health. Michael Pollan wrote a great book called How to Change Your Mind. Michael Pollan also wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma and is a very well thought of author. There's several other books that are great. Plant Medicine and the Imaginal Realm is a phenomenal book. And what I believe the reason that it's not available is because half the mental health community and the pharmaceutical industry would be wiped out if they allowed these natural plants to be available, because they're cheap and they're very effective curative type of substances, and that's why they, in my opinion, it's all about money, and because there's no logical reason why these natural plants, these powerful tools for our health, are unavailable to us, and that they would point guns at you, for having a natural plant or use of a natural plant. Anyway, my heart breaks for the young heroin addict who I knew. He recently committed suicide a few years ago, and I knew him, and he's a young guy in his 20s, and beautiful young guy, and he was depressed that he couldn't get off of that stuff, so he killed himself. And it's my firm belief that people like that can be helped mightily by having a look at themselves through the use of these natural plants like ayahuasca. And so it's my hope and prayer that we're able to gain more access to that. And most people that were on this journey came away with a tremendous amount of love, respect, and thankfulness for Mother Ayahuasca, for each other, for the staff, and for the world. And we arrived from all over the world and from all walks of life as strangers. And when we left, we were a family. There is a quality about ayahuasca that drops the borders of everything. It dissolves the cultural and social and institutional borders, and it causes unity. And that's the one thing that I'll leave you with, is there's a tremendous amount of self-examination and an examination of the whole world, and that we are all connected and part of it. And so I come away with a great appreciation for human life and for the world we live in. And I'm doing my best in whatever clumsy way I know how to show you that I love you and that I care about you, and I'm willing to pour out my heart and soul in hopes that somebody might get a little something out of it and raise the vibration of humanity. And at some point we'll reach a collective, and there'll be a big cymatic shift and a opening of the Christ consciousness. And this is how it comes to me, folks. I love you. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. I love you. Bye-bye.